one is Si Mohammed Benhim.
Hima,
Okay,
yes.
Benhima, yes. Let me first say a few words about you, Si Mohammed Benhima. Si Mohammed Benhima is a teacher researcher in Qaiban Salah province or delegate directorate. He works on current education topics related mainly to COVID-19, distance education. He has investigated many affected factors involved in language learning. Si Mohammed Benhima will talk about the relationship between motivation and learning strategies among learners, among Moroccan EFL students during COVID-19 distance education. See, Mohammed, the floor is yours. You got 15 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Sid Mahi. So, if you allow me just to share the screen. Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So, my presentation is about the relationship between motivation and learning strategies during COVID-19 distance education, as you said. So first of all, I would like to thank you all. I would like to thank MATE members and organizers for all the efforts they have been making to make this webinar, an opportunity for us to share the research with other practitioners and to have like feedback, etc. So my presentation is about the relationship between motivation and learning strategies during COVID-19 distance education. And before starting, I would like to ask you the following questions. So the first question is that what kind of motivation do you expect students, EFL students, to have, during COVID-19 distance education? Is it like intrinsic motivation that stems from the self, or extrinsic motivation that stems from other external factors? So this is the first question that you can think about. The second question is, do you think that there is a relationship between motivation and learning strategies? That is, students who are motivated will be, for example, use some learning strategies to learn. And the last question, do you think that COVID-19 distance education has like a negative or positive impact on students' motivation during distance education? So these are the research questions that I'm going to address in this research. So I'm going to use the IMRAD method, that is Introduction, Review of Literature, Methods, Results, Discussion, etc. So starting with introduction, as you know, starting with definition of some key terms like motivation. As you know, motivation is what pushes students to learn. And some studies, some previous studies have investigated the relationship between motivation on the one hand and learning strategies on the other hand, especially Pentrick et al. This is like the first study that has adopted motivated learning strategies scales that I'm going to adopt in this study. So, however, no study has been carried out in the Moroccan context. That's why I took the initiative and I applied that, adapted the scales to Moroccan students, especially in the English departments in Morocco, and taking the case of Moulay Ismail University, or Sultan Moulay Ismail University in Beni Mellal. Therefore, it is the aim of the current study to investigate the relationship between motivation level and learning strategies. So I'm going to start with some taxonomies on motivation. Like as you see here, we have the two models of motivation. The one is about the sociocultural model, which consists of integrative and instrumental motivation. Integrative motivation is about the willingness to be in part in the society, like being in a foreign country. Instrumental motivation is like willing to have a job and work. So it's more or less the same with like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. The first one stemming from the self, and the second one stemming from external factors. So for the learning strategies taxonomies, I'm presenting here the taxonomy of, so I'm sorry, just to remove some screens. Okay, now we can see clearly. So anyway, as I said, So Oxford's learning strategies, it is divided into like direct and indirect learning strategies. For direct learning strategies, they consist of memory strategies, cognitive strategies, compensation strategies. And for indirect learning strategies, they consist of metacognitive strategies, affective strategies having to do with emotions, feelings, etc., and social strategies. And for the other models of Omari and Chamot, Makishi 1986, he divided the learning strategies into three parts again. Cognitive strategies, they have to do with the cognition, they involve selection, organization, elaboration. Metacognitive strategies, they involve setting goals, planning, etc. Whereas resource management involve time management, anti-distractor, social interaction. So I'm adapting this this taxonomy and just some parts of it, especially time management, because it's important during COVID-19 distance education, like peer learning, help seeking, etc. As we are going to see. For Omali, also divided strategies into three parts: metacognitive, cognitive, and socio-affective. As you see, these strategies are overlapping. As I said, just like summary, motivation can be extrinsic or intrinsic or extrinsic, according to Lambert and Garden, Dorney, and among others. It can also be integrative or instrumental. Learning strategies are divided into cognitive, metacognitive, and resource management strategies. Cognitive strategies involve selection, organization, elaboration, etc. Metacognitive strategies involve especially planning, and resource management involve, for example, time management, dealing with anti-distractors, especially in social media, and peer support, etc. So for the methodology that I've adopted, I used mixed methods design, departing from pragmatic stance to knowledge. For the research instruments, I used questionnaires and focus groups to collect both quantitative and qualitative data. For the sampling, I used voluntary sampling for the questionnaire and snowball sampling for the focus group. And for the data analysis procedures, I used Spaces version 26 and Excel version 2016. For the methodology, I used like two phases. The first phase is a quantitative and it is explanatory. The second phase is a qualitative and it involves the use of focus group. That is the qualitative data to understand the phenomenon in depth. For the third phase, I triangulated both the data taken from the questionnaire and the focus group to cross-check the data for more reliability and credibility. For the problem and the research questions, so for the problems is that students are observed to be less motivated during COVID-19 distance education. Resource management strategies, when it comes to dealing with distractors, are more prominent during self-regulated learning during COVID-19. For the purpose statement, so the purpose of this study is to investigate the type of motivation as well as the learning strategies, along with the relationship between them using mixed method explanatory sequential design. For the research questions, I asked you this at the beginning. So I asked about the type of motivation students have to study English during COVID-19, the different or the frequent learning strategies students use, and whether or not there is any relationship between motivation and learning strategies. So for the research objectives stem from the research questions to some extent. So as you can see, I'm going to skip them. The research hypothesis, again, null hypothesis, no relationship between motivation and learning strategies, and alternative hypothesis, there is a relationship between learning strategies. So we're going to test this using Spearman or Pearson correlation test. Anyway, for the results, as you can see here, so the predominant type of learning strategies, students were asked to evaluate some statements in terms of the extent to which they apply to them on a 7-point Likert scale, or rather semantic differential scale, ranging from not true of me to very true of me. And the results are as follows. So as you can see here, the majority of students, depending on the mean score, as you can see here, it's the highest mean is this one. So wanting to get better grades than most of the other students, and getting a good grade for satisfaction. So as you can see, this scale from 1 to 4 is all for the extrinsic motivation. That is, the majority of Moroccan students have like extrinsic motivation. They just want to get good grades. The second thing is that, so as it's the same, so I'm going to skip this. So the second question is about the correlation between motivation and learning strategies. So as you can see here, for the motivation scale in general, there is a positive correlation between motivation on the one hand, self-organization, time and study environment, and peer learning and help seeking. So although it's strong in some cases like self-organization and help seeking, it's somehow moderate in the other. But it is statistically significant. This is the most important thing. This means that it can be generalized to others. So the correlation between the motivations, this is the same. For the third research question, whether or not there is any impact on COVID-19 distance education on students' motivation. Students were asked this question, whether COVID-19 distance education has affected your motivation positively. And so from this is a scale from 1 to 10. So the majority of students said like 4, so this is the average. This means that COVID-19 education does not like improve motivation of students. Okay, so this is the main finding. So in general, as a summary, the majority of students have extrinsic motivation. There is a positive correlation between motivation and the use of some learning strategies of self-organization, peer learning, and help seeking. COVID-19 distance education has an impact on students' motivation, which is like more or less negative impact. And students have divergent attitudes towards distance education, motivation, and learning strategies. So the last one I didn't present it here. It's taken from the statements of students in the focus group. So as conclusions, the current study investigates the relationship between motivation and learning strategies. And it has revealed that there is in fact a relationship between motivation and learning strategies. And yes?
You still have 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm almost done. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So this study has shed light on the relation between extrinsic and extrinsic motivation, learning strategies of cognition, metacognition, resource management, as you saw, and the sample size is for limitations. So there is a sample size. I didn't report it here. The sample size is like 106 students. So it's like major limitation to the current study in terms of generalizability because it's not that powerful, taking the sampling frame, etc. Future research should focus on how to motivate students and teach them learning strategies, because the study has revealed that there is a relationship between motivation and learning strategies. That is, those students who are motivated are going to use learning strategies to learn by themselves, and this will improve their autonomy, which is like the South goal according to pedagogical guidelines of 2006 and 7, etc. It is highly recommended that self-regulation and distraction avoidance should be solved, because students do not know how to deal with distraction, and especially on social media, they keep scrolling up and down and they waste a lot of time. This is what has been reported. So these are suggestions more or less the same. Teachers should motivate students. Students should use different learning strategies to be autonomous. Further research should focus on other learning strategies, not studying hearing, because I didn't have like the space to include all the learning strategies in this study. And these are the references that I have used. And I would like to thank you all for your attention. And if you have questions, we can discuss them later.
Thank you very much, Simon.